Okay, hello everybody. So this is my mom and I, and recently we had one of my mom's clients talk to her and asked her about doing like a workout for a booty workout basically, and the goal was to build the glutes without building the legs.
Bubble booty.
Yeah, bubble booty. So that's what the client asked for. So we figured we'd make a video today showing one of my mom's leg workouts and just talk about the concept of trying to increase glute size. And we'll throw in some stuff that does increase leg size if you want that. But along the way, we'll kind of be discussing on how do you get the difference of just glutes versus glutes and thighs. And also how important your nutrition is if you want to actually build some muscle. Okay, so we're going to go through the workout and I'll kind of talk you guys through it. Okay? Okay, so usually the first thing we start with for my mom's workouts is to get her adductors, the inner thigh, kind of loosened up. So we do some foam rolling. And the idea of this is if your adductors are tight, which for most people they are because we stay seated all day, is they're going to be, when they're tight, they're going to pull your hips kind of like into a bad position when you squat, and you'll have a hard time getting down to parallel and really maximizing the stretch of your hamstrings and glutes. So just spending 1 minute doing this on each leg is enough. So you can go a little bit longer if you want, but just kind of rolling back and forth on those inner thigh muscles. Then she'll go ahead and switch sides. I'm going to kind of walk around her. So, and doing a little bit of mobility, like just prepping your body for motion and movement, is a really good idea. It's not, I wouldn't say it's 100% necessary. You know, if you can train and feel good and be in the right positions, that's great. If during your training you feel things being tight or stiff, or you always have to kind of, you'd say you have to work through the tightness, it might be a better idea to prep yourself for the movement first. If you have to quote-unquote work through the stiffness, often what you're doing is you're pulling on really tight muscles and structures, and you're going to cause inflammation and annoyance more than what you'd really like. So getting the movement smoother before you get into your workout is a good idea. So the next thing she does is she kind of rolls her upper back here on the foam roller. And again, this is kind of just prepping up those muscles, getting some blood flow to her upper back. It's going to help get rid of kind of like a slouchy feeling in your back if you've been sitting a lot. So this kind of opens you up and kind of gets you ready for movements that are going to require better posture than what you're currently bringing into the gym. Okay, there you go. So that's a little bit of our prep. Okay, so here's one of our glute warm-ups we'll do from time to time. This is a glute bridge. So you can see here, my mom is resting on her shoulders and pushing from her heels and just trying to squeeze her glutes. So that's a glute bridge, and that blue band that's around her knees is called a hip circle. And it's kind of an elastic band covered with like a cotton material so it's more comfortable in your skin. And what she's going to do is try to push out into that band. So the glute bridges, the first one she was doing, work your gluteus maximus, so your large glute muscle, these ones. And that kind of works the big booty muscle that we all can see. And then the exercise she was doing where she pushed into the band, that actually works your smaller glute muscles. So we have underneath our big glute muscles, we have a bunch of small muscles. And you can see she kind of pushes out on that. And she tries to keep her feet nice and flat. So it'll be a little hard to see on the squishy mat. But that's the idea, she's pushing out into the band. And again, this kind of is a superset, and it works on the glutes only. So you wouldn't have to worry about growing your thighs. This targets just the glutes. And it's a really good warm-up or finisher for a workout. And those hip circles are like $20-30, and you can buy them on howmuchyoubench.net, or you can just Google hip circle. So then if we look over here, we have all these muscle man charts over here. So you can see this is our big glute muscle. That's the one she's working with, the glute bridge. And then on this side you can see the muscles underneath the big ones. So these small muscles are all underneath this big one. And that's what we're working when we push out and in against the band. So we're supersetting something that targets the big muscle with something that targets the smaller underlying structures to make sure they're nice and strong as well. Cool. Okay, this is another warm-up we do that does target your glutes, and it does work your hamstrings as well. But the idea of this machine is called a 45-degree hyperextension. And you can see as my mom goes down, she's going to try to push her belly towards the floor. And that really stretches her hamstrings. So sometimes we'll run into an issue when we do lifts that you might have a little bit of lower back pain during a squat or deadlift, more than what you'd really like. And it sometimes can come from the hamstrings being very tight. So this exercise helps to kind of loosen perceptive tightness. And what that means is there's really no injury or anything, or no main reason for why the hamstrings would be tight. They're just kind of tight from sitting around and being not being used much all day. So this kind of helps to open them up and coax your body into more easy, free range of motion. And then whenever you go into your squats or deadlifts or other lower body exercises, the hamstrings will stretch the way they should, and therefore you get less pull and tugging on your lower back. So for this, we might do, say, 2 to 3 sets of 10 reps, just going nice and slow. Okay, so here's the next part of our workout. After we got through the mobility stuff, a little bit of warm-ups, and that glute pump, we next are moving into barbell squats. So this would be like the heavy strength movement of the day. So we're showing you some of our warm-ups here. And what I want to talk about during the warm-ups is how everyone's squat technique is going to look a little bit different because people are built differently. So some people have a longer midsection, some people have a shorter one. Some people have longer legs, like upper legs, some people have shorter ones. So everybody's built slightly different. So your technique might look a little different than my mom's. We have my mom doing what's called a push back or hip back technique first, and that sets her back angle. So the tilt she's at there is the same as she goes up and down. That way her lower back has a consistent weight load to it, and it's very safe for her lower back. All the work gets put into her legs, and it gives her a nice, safe, consistent position. So this is the technique that works best for her. Now I do work with many more people, so I'm not really sure the exact amount, but everybody has a form slightly different. So work with what fits best for you. Okay, so we just got done telling you guys that everything needs to be independent for each individual, kind of like what fits your body type the best. However, if you are trying to target your glutes, there are some consistent things that need to be in place. So one of the things you'll see with my mom's squat is her foot width. So her feet are going to be as wide as her shoulders. So you look at shoulder, they'll be a little bit wider than that, but they're definitely not just right underneath her hips. So a lot of times people squat with too narrow of a stance, and that really limits how much their hips can get involved. When your feet are wider than your hip width, it activates a lot of the small muscles in your glutes, and it helps a lot of those muscles in the hips get more activated and more involved in the squat. So if you are squatting to build a booty, to build your glutes, you do have to have your feet wider than your hips. That's definitely one component. And then in my mom's next set, we'll talk about another component. Cool. Okay, so here we are for another set of squats. And the other component we're going to talk about in terms of everybody needs a little bit different form, but there are some universal movements. So we said the foot width is one of them, so how wide your feet are compared to your hips. The other one is that your hips have to push back. You can't have your knees just shoot forward when you're doing the squat. So a lot of people, when they don't have their feet wide enough, they can't squat the parallel. And when their feet are wide enough, they just kind of start by just shoving their knees forward. You can see how my mom's hips go back, and then she goes down. That lets her get nice and low and really stretch and get her glutes and hamstrings involved into the lift. If you don't get the hips to go back, you're not going to get that good stretch and get those muscles involved. So that's why we have the position that we have her do, is it gets her loaded into the glutes and hamstrings, since they're the muscles we want to grow. Okay, so we just discussed kind of the two universal things we need when you're moving and squatting for the specific goal of glutes, is your feet have to be wider than your hips, and you have to let your hips go back and not have your knees shoot out over your toes. So this does require your lower back to accept some weight, but that's okay. Your lower back is built to do that. So you just want to start with weights that you feel safe and comfortable with and build up over time. So traditionally with these, in this workout, if you're doing a glute-based workout, is you do a small warm-up like we did with that hip circle, then you go into heavier multi-joint movement like a barbell squat like this. And we would typically aim for anywhere from 3 to 5 sets of 3 to 5 reps. And the goal is to lift stuff heavy, heavier than what you're used to. Now, if you don't feel safe going 3 to 5, reps because you're learning technique yet, it's okay. You can move up to anywhere up to say 10 reps if you need to. The idea is that you're just putting extra weight onto your muscular system and bone system than what you're traditionally used to. That's going to help promote you to build denser, thicker muscles in those glutes. So now that my mom and I have kind of worked through some technique things with her, and we've shown you guys some videos, we're going to start slowly working up in our weight so you can start to see kind of the intensity we're looking for. So the goal is that my mom is going to move this weight with very clean, good form. Now, we want the weight to be heavy enough to be very challenging for her, so where she has to work really hard to keep the good form, but not so heavy that she can't actually do it. So you can see that looked perfect. That was right at parallel. That got a really good stretch in her glutes and hamstrings. You can see at the bottom of the lift right there. And that's going to ensure that as she's using her thighs, she's also using her glutes. And that's what's going to help her build a bigger glute muscle over time. Excellent. She killed it. Okay, so here's the next set for my mom. So we moved up to 185. So my mom's personal best squat is 265. And we typically squat 2 to 3 times a week. And each time we squat, we have a precise percentage we kind of usually stay within. And I'll show you guys that in a second. So right now, she's going to go 3 very strong reps. You got it. Hit the bottom, squeeze the glutes. Excellent job. 1. Good. Trust yourself. Good. Down and squeeze glutes. Excellent job. Super strong. Good. Down and glutes. Excellent job. She did really well. Okay, so here we are. We're setting up for what will probably be our top set of the day. So this is a 200-pound squat. And again, I mentioned that we squat 2 to 3 times a week. Today's workout ended up being one of our kind of lighter medium days. We usually squat within 70 to 80% of our 1 rep max. So let's see how she does. Again, we have our feet wider than our hips, and she's going to let her hips go back so that way she really stretches and activates those glutes and hamstrings. She's going to split the floor and pop. Excellent job. Big breathe, embrace. Good. Split the floor and up with the glutes. Excellent. Good. Same thing. Hold the P to brace the pelvic floor. Push back. Split, 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 and up. And squeeze glutes. Easy. We might have to add weight to that. So let me scan right over here since we got you on the video. Is what we have on the wall here is we have charts showing like somebody's 1 rep max and the percent that their weight would be. So for example, we say my mom's 1 rep max is 265. Now that is like a best case scenario too. So we would assume that she'll be typically about 95% of that is kind of what we would consider her real max. So we go up to 250, and if we look, she's doing 200. She'll right at the top of our window of that 70 to 80%. So we worked our way from the bottom, that 70%, and we did multiple sets of 3, working our way to that 80%. So and the reason why we're following these percentages is there's a chart called Prilepin's chart, you can see right there. And this tells you in the world of strength training, like powerlifting, is kind of the percentage you would use, how many sets and reps, what's the total optimal number of reps. So we use charts like this to help us track our progress and understand what's realistic with our goals and expectations. Okay, so here's our first accessory exercise after the squats. So this is how you build the glutes up. So we're doing a glute bridge, and in the description of this video we will have a link to exact form videos and kind of tutorials. So in this, what we're basically doing is we're trying to drive our glutes up into the bar. So she's doing sets of 10, and we're trying to get a good squeeze of the glutes up into that barbell. And that's going to help her build her glutes, and it doesn't really target your thighs much. So if you wanted that like booty pop, so you want a bigger booty but you don't want to thicken your legs out too much, this is a very good exercise choice. It focuses mostly on the hips. Okay, so the other exercise we're pairing with those glute bridges is on our belt squat. I know you guys won't have access to this, but I want you to see kind of like a neat, unique movement. And then we have other alternatives in the written plan. So she's going to be pushing back. This is similar to an RDL, or Romanian deadlift. And where she's trying to get a good stretch, there is a balance factor, so that's what she's catching right now. Is she's trying to stretch everything back here on the back side, so that way she can come up and drive the glutes forward. So this is very similar to a glute bridge in where, like if we were laying down with that bar, is you let your hips drop to the floor, then you drive them forward. So she's going to let her knees bend as she drives her hips back, then she's trying to drive her hips forward and squeeze those glutes. So the majority of the stretch you're aiming for should be in the glutes, and this is just a good kind of fun standing alternative to a lying down glute bridge. Excellent, she's doing really good. So we do pair these two together just to save time. So while she's resting from one, we'll go into the other. Excellent, good job, Mom. Okay, so the next movements we're going into, we'll show you 3 of them, and these are going to actually be put together as a circuit. So these do work your thighs as well as your glutes. Well, this one does. So this is something you can use, is if you don't want to overgrow the thigh, but you still want it to be muscular and toned, and you want to have a better balance in your legs. This is a really good exercise. So any kind of body weight style lunging. So right now we're using a slide board, which is actually just the base of an old treadmill that didn't work anymore. So we took it apart and used the board for a slide board. And you can see in this movement is, if somebody had really big front of the legs but they had nothing on the back side, and maybe they didn't like the shape of their legs, doing body weight exercises like this, walking lunges, reverse lunges, even like goblet squats with a light dumbbell, things that's mostly just your body weight, they're really good for shaping and toning the muscle and keeping it tight, but not getting it too large to where you're going to miss the proportion that you're trying to grow of bigger glutes but not having bigger legs. So again, this is something you can throw into the mix at the middle towards the end of the workout. And it's a good kind of high rep finisher, so usually we do sets of 10 to 20. And we'll usually do sets of 10 to 20 reps. And we usually do anywhere from 2 to 5 sets, depending on the conditioning of the person involved. Cool. Okay, so here's the second movement in our finishing circuit. It's a short range of motion targeted specifically just for the glutes. So my mom is wanting to go down until the glutes reach a stretch, but she's not trying to stretch into the hamstrings like we did at the very beginning, where we were actually trying to use this to open up the hamstrings. She's going to keep this short range of motion, keep the pump just in those glutes. So you can see she's holding on to some light dumbbells, and that's very good for adding resistance. The glutes are very strong muscles, so adding a little bit of weight does help keep them pumped up and work them better. So, and again, this is a really good exercise for targeting just the glutes, but not overbuilding the thighs if that was a concern. If it isn't a concern of yours, you can increase your range of motion like we did at the very beginning of the workout, and go ahead and incorporate more hamstrings into this motion, and you can also try heavier weight. That'll help build the muscle as well. So again, she's purposely being very short, she's not over contracting her lower back, and she's not trying to stretch and contract her hamstrings. Excellent job, Mom. Okay, this is the last exercise in our circuit, and this is our reverse hyperextension. It's a bench that has a weight peg down here that you would typically swing. If you think of the previous motion, we had the legs in place and we were moving our upper body. This is the opposite. We have our upper body in place and we're moving our legs. So she's coming up and getting a good squeeze and a pause at the top. This actually targets your upper glutes, so you get up in this area because we're moving the opposite end. The 45 hyperextensions target the lower glutes since you're moving the top of the body. So this helps target the upper versus the lower glutes. And putting these back to back is a really good way to hit the muscle belly from the top to bottom and provide a little bit of variety while still hitting the same muscle again and adding more volume to it. Excellent job. Okay, so that was my mom's workout. So we went through and showed you guys a kind of a mobility warm-up, getting you ready to move. Yeah. Then we did that hip circle stuff to kind of pump up the glutes. Then we did heavy squats, which helped work the glutes in a very strong, heavy manner. That's so too often when... Yeah, good. Sorry. So I'm doing all the talking. But too often when people try to work their glutes, they typically do a lot of light, squeezy stuff, which isn't bad at all, but it's only half the equation. So if you think about like you and I working together, what builds your glutes the most has definitely been squats and deadlifts, and then heavy walking lunges. Back when we used to do bodybuilding shows, so my mom has done 3 bodybuilding shows and 3 or 4 powerlifting meets. I lost count already. So, and that's all after the age of 50. So when we grew a lot to our legs, we were doing a lot of this style of structure here, where we're doing the light stuff, like to warm you up, heavy lift, and then the light lifts after that. But it was that heavy lifting that really made the big difference.
Yeah.
So that's what we want to get across in this video is if you want to build glutes, you do have to lift some heavy things. So yes. And then we also included in this video, we'll also have a link to a written description of a workout, a template for you guys. So something you can do to kind of mimic what we did today. And it has tutorial videos with some of the exercises. So not only do you have the exercise, the sets, and the reps written, we'll also have a link on how to learn how to do it as well. Okay. So I did a lot of the talking. Someday I'll let her talk. So, but for now, we'll keep her as the beautiful model doing yes, there you go, doing all the exercises. So hopefully you guys found this helpful. If we get good feedback, we'll try to make some more like these.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you guys.